Hello, everybody. Yes, Adam, I'm the only one who can see Adam, and he can't see you. But Adam, just so you know, everybody's very attractive and very friendly on this side, so it's all good, mate. So yes,
Good
Adam
stuff.
will, the voice of God, right? So yeah, Adam is he'll introduce himself in a minute. But yeah, thank you for coming to this session. Really, really excited to talk about this work that we did together. A story that we're going to tell together. So don't you just love being here at Mainstream, though? You know, like I just think, how often do we get to be amongst our tribe to this sort of extent, right? It's just like all maintenance folks everywhere, and I really love it. But I think it was, or I used to think it was Steve Jobs that said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. But when I put it in ChatGPT, it turns out it was Leonardo da Vinci that originally said it. Anyway, I think Steve Jobs did a good job of operationalizing that concept. And I think, you know, what stands out for me in that phrase, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, is that if you use this concept to solve a problem, then you can often solve it quickly, you can keep it solved, and you can get real results in a short period of time. So we're going to tell you a story that's kind of how it played out. I think of this as our E equals MC squared story, like absolute simplicity. And it's not that it's easy if it's simple. I'd hazard to say that actually it's more difficult when you do it in a simple way. Anyway, it's probably rude with not introducing ourselves, so maybe I'll just hand over to Adam to do a quick introduction of himself. Adam.
No worries. Thanks, Kurt. Hi, folks. My name's Adam Mason. I'm the manager of the Maintenance Improvement Program at Talison Lithium. As Peter mentioned, apologies I couldn't be there today. Funnily enough, we have a shutdown on and we're right in the middle of it, so that's sort of taken my attention for the week. I'm a reliability engineer by trade. Prior to this role, I spent time in superintendent roles, building both reliability programs and planning teams and programs. I've been at Talison for just over 5 years now. I arrived right before the expansion really took off and our organisation exploded in size. Prior to that, I was up at Argyle Diamonds until the operation closed at the end of 2020. That's it for me, Dirk. Across to you.
Thanks, Adam. So my name used to be Dirk Vermooten, but then I moved to Australia about 20 years back, and I didn't know you also changed your name, so now I'm Dirk Vermooten. And I worked 20 years in heavy industry in operations and maintenance positions, worked in steel, worked in ferrochrome, worked in minerals processing, magnetite, iron ore. And then, then as what happens sometimes in careers, I got made redundant and I had to find a new way forward. So I had my own consulting business for a while and worked for a shipping company called Canada Steamship Lines, which ironically operates a few vessels around Australia. And then I joined Hatch about 8 years ago. So kind of 20 years in heavy industry, like living it every day, and then 10 years now in consulting. So I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a husband of a lovely wife, father of 3, and a certified hypnotherapist. So if you start feeling tired, you know what's happening. 1, 2, 3, wake up. Alrighty, so what we'll do now is we'll just tell you a little bit about Talison, because I think, like you were saying, it's such a fascinating story, and it's one of the most well-guarded secrets, I think, in the region, if not the country. So maybe I'm moving on to the next slide, Adam. Maybe if you tell us a bit about Talison.
No worries. Thanks, Dirk. I wasn't aware of the hypnotherapist qualification. That might explain a couple of things, but
yep.
The Talison story, I guess we've been going a long time, but people don't really understand who we are and I guess what we do. So I guess tucked away in the corner of the southwest is a mining and processing juggernaut. We are without peer when it comes to our market-defining position of a single commodity. And the best way I can probably explain it is Greenbushes is to lithium as the entire Pilbara is to iron ore, as Chile is to copper, and as Africa is to gold. These are names that are synonymous with that commodity, except we're a single site, and we're comparing to whole regions and countries. So it's hard to understate our position, and what we do for the world's clean energy transition. We've been at the forefront of what the world needs for over 120 years. We're the longest continuous operating mining lease in Western Australia. We started with tin, then moved to tantalum, and now lithium. Our market position is unmatched, and that really is underpinned by an ore body that is both spectacular in its size and grade. And that's what sets us apart and gives us our competitive advantage over the rest of the market. The ore body is a true outlier in every sense of the word. And if there was such thing as a tier 0 ore body category, we would be firmly in it. So that really sets us up for success and positions us very well. But it comes with its own set of complications and challenges.
So, yeah, that just blew me away when I realised this. Like, it's like the old Pilbara is to iron ore, that one mine tucked away in that southwest corner. So I guess that the next thing I wanted to talk about is kind of values. Like when Hatch works with our clients, we're always interested in understanding, how well we are aligned in our values. And it's true to say that in very few cases ever, we found a client that was more aligned with our values. So if you look at the left here, that's what we call our manifesto. So it's our vision, mission, values. And it really tells you who we are and what we believe is really important. And one of the key premises that you will see is that we are committed to a better world through positive change. And now you will see, and Adam will talk about the Talison values, that there's really good alignment across those. Adam?
Yeah, so I guess, we've seen the same thing from our side too. So our values are a fairly simple set of values that all come back to one simple idea, and that's care. Care for people, care for the future, and care about doing the right thing. And it's a way of making decisions that considers who we affect today, what we'll leave behind tomorrow, and the integrity we bring to the choices we make. So these values are not just to make us feel nice about the things we do, but deliberate about the impact our decisions have. And I think where the real common alignment was between the two was that we really care about what the future looks like and the legacy that we leave behind. So I think it become a really natural fit for the two organisations to work together, and I think we've seen that alignment throughout the work we've done. Back to you, Dirk.
Thanks, Adam. And I think one of the things that I really, I've only been with Hatch for 8 years, but one thing that stood out to me immediately is that this manifesto is something that's lived in Hatch. Many times you'd see a set of values on the walls or on a boardroom, and it's just words on a page. But for us, it's really lived. And that's also where we saw the same thing happening in Talison, where at every meeting there's a discussion about values. So, that alignment sat very well for us. But one thing, like Adam said, 120 years or so, the reality of that is that it comes with a lot of complexity, Adam. Isn't that right? Especially if we look into this shutdown space.
Yeah, so I guess everything that you see on the screen there, well, I'm hoping you guys can see on the screen there.
Yes.
There's a lot of factors that all conspire together, and the net result is an extraordinarily complex shutdown structure for a single site operation. The net result of all that is 72 individual shutdowns per year across 8 plants, so 3 crushing plants and 5 wet plants, that all have different designs, different layouts, different problems, and varying levels of asset condition. And no 2 plants are alike, and they are just completely different beasts, all of them. And all that has to happen on a single site. And that's supported by a very small group of dedicated asset management professionals across the organisation that unfortunately have very immature systems at their disposal and are very reliant on people-driven processes. Adding to that fact is that the shutdowns are executed by a group of 20 plus local contractors that aren't primarily from a mining background. They're mainly from workshops and Monday to Friday businesses. And up until now, we haven't had a camp to utilise. So we literally mobilise this workforce from every corner of the southwest, and they come together to perform our shutdowns at Talison. The net result is that every second week is a shutdown. And that week might be a combination of 2 to 3 shutdowns joined together, which we need to execute effectively as one. Having a shutdown every second week is extraordinarily difficult and puts the organisation under a lot of pressure. There's no breathing room, there's no headspace for change. The shutdown cycle is relentless, and any overrun that we have has significant knock-on effects. For all this to work, the business needs to be in a steady rhythm. Our processes need to be lean, our organisation needs to be stable and working together, our systems efficient, our decision-making consistent and cognizant of potential impacts throughout our shutdown ecosystem. It all needs to work together in harmony for us to pull this off. And somehow we've been doing it largely with people-driven processes for a long time now. And I guess touching to that there's added weight that our major business constraint is our processing plant performance. So with the same people responsible for every single shutdown and so many shutdowns that are all people driven, there's a significant burden placed on a small group. So it's remarkable really that we've made it this far, but we have, and that's one of the things that makes Greenbushes special, which we can touch on in the next slide.
Yeah, and I guess like you said, it blew me away originally when I thought about this concept of 52. Used to be 52 shutdowns. Now it's stepped up to in the 70 with 2 new plants joining. But there were some good foundational elements to build on, right, Adam?
Yeah. So I guess like anything, our strength at Greenbushes has always been with our people. That's the solid foundation that we had to build off. So we were expanding at breakneck speed. We're executing these shutdowns just to keep our head above water. But the people is what really propped us up and kept us going. So despite all the challenges of the previous slide, our people have been getting it done at Greenbushes for over 120 years. We've got a can-do attitude that's hardwired into the Greenbushes DNA. We had the capability, the resilience, and the know-how in our people to build off, which gave us a good start. I touched on before about our local contractor workforce, and whilst it was quite challenging to manage and to mobilise that contractor workforce every second week, they really are a community of contractors with a remarkable level of cooperation and ownership. It can be unwieldy to manage, but these guys and girls, they act as one. They are all locals that know each other. Their kids play footy together. They move in the same social circles, and they're all there to help each other out. It's like nothing I've seen before when we're executing a shutdown and people call out for help, and all the contractors are all willing to help each other out and just get the job done. And these folks don't just have a labour hire shirt on. They represent the name of their small local business, and that comes with a level of pride and ownership that money can't buy. And it really is one of the unique strengths that we have with our shutdowns, that we really want to make sure that we don't lose that as we evolve through this process, because once it's gone, we won't get it back. So it's a challenge, but a strength all at the same time. And probably the last point is that our business has gone through a period of very rapid expansion over the last 5 years, and then through another period of major change over the last 18 months. We've had a new executive team come in, starting with Mr. Rob Telford, who's our CEO, and Adam Malaspina, who's our COO. And those two, combined with some of the people that they've brought with them, have been a breath of fresh air into our organisation. They quickly realised what needed to be done and what our challenges were, and they also recognised that their most important asset is their people. So they've empowered us to improve, to drive our teams forward and do things a better way, and really strive to bring stability to a business that has been growing at absolute breakneck speed and hasn't caught its breath for 5 years and counting. And that journey is still going. So those three, I guess, key pillars were what we had to build off, and I think we're extremely fortunate to have that. So that was our starting point, and then what that allowed us to do is to partner with Hatch to come in and help us to build off that and start to do things a better way.
Yes, and I think, like Adam said a few times, there was this breakneck speed of expansion really put a strain on a business. And specifically, when the new leadership started, Rob Telford started, he was worried about, are the systems strong enough to support the pace? And one of the things that he was worried about was maintenance specifically. And so he brought Hatch in to have a specific look at maintenance, because we had done sort of similar work with BHP in the past where he's from. And so, that whole diagnostic process that we conducted very quickly flagged shutdowns as a major issue. Just 52 a year is already going to tell you this is a big driver of value, right? And also what we saw very quickly is that a lot of shutdowns were overrunning substantially. And it was not only the overrun that was the problem, it was also the instability caused by the shutdown. So most of the shutdowns for the bigger plants are every 8 weeks. But then if we look at stable operation before the shut, and then when we get to stable operation after the shut, even though the shut might be only 60 hours or so, that was about 5 days of instability that we saw because of that. So it was a big driver for us. And so immediately, like in the first week, we said we have to look deeper into shutdowns. And then so we conducted, and some of you would have maybe seen the demo we did earlier. We conducted this shutdown assessment, which really works. It was a marathon session with Adam and a lot of the planners, superintendents, etc. And we went through this questionnaire that looked through all of those phases of the shutdown that you can see there, and then ultimately kicks out some kind of spider chart that tells you where you sit in relation what your better and worse areas, but also where you sit in relation to good and best practice, which is useful, and then helps you obviously to focus effort. But as you can see in this case, nothing was really bad, but nothing was really good either. So what that told us pretty quickly was that there was an overall stress placed on the whole system that was making it difficult to get through this. And you can imagine, it's like shutdown after shutdown after shutdown, right? So, and if you think about that whole scenario that was playing out there, then in a business like Talison, every lost ton is huge lost revenue, right? And that the whole probably true for most people. So that was a direct impact on the bottom line. Like Adam said, the one runs into the other one. Like one of the weeks has 3 shuts that back onto each other. So if you have one go wrong, then it rolls the next one, and all of a sudden you have a big problem. That's very hard if you work in that environment to take a breath and your morale is suffering. You just kind of get used to overruns as like the thing, like if it wasn't even considered like a major failure at one point anymore. No space to learn. It's just about looking after the symptoms, and like I said, even though there's reasonable maturity, it's showing that this whole system is highly stressed. So then, obviously, what we did together as a team between the Hatch and the Talison teams, we kind of looked at the structured approach to deal with this issue. So obviously we've spent already a bit of time in diagnose, but what I want to say here is even though that initial diagnosis was kind of useful, where we really started to get to the bottom of the problem is when we started to work with the Talison guys on the shuts. So one of the things that the Hatch team helped with on the shuts was we helped manage the Gantt chart. So there was a Gantt chart, and there's 20 contractors, and these things were unwieldy. 2,000 lines, like for a 60-hour shut. And then we would have 3 of those. So we would have, the big plant would have 2,000 lines, and the other 2 plants would have 1,000 each. So it's big, there's 20 contractors, and we wanted to really check a couple of things. We wanted to make sure that the plan was sensible and worked, and at the start it wasn't. We wanted to make sure that the contractors actually followed the plan, because like Adam was saying, bless them, they made things happen, but they moved things around by themselves, and they would, they would do whatever they thought in their little neck of the woods might work, but they couldn't see the bigger picture, right? So we want to make sure that that the Gantt was right, then that people follow the Gantt, and then that we get the feedback in time so that we can see where things are going to end up. So that's what we worked on at the start. And really, when we started this process, the Gantt was a list of work for the contractors. So each one had their own Gantt, and it had their list, and they just kind of worked through that. There was no accountability back to that. And so that's what we got, was this overrun happening. So we worked really hard on making sure, the first thing we actually do was just make sure that the contractors gave feedback regularly, every shift, twice a shift sometimes. And the interesting thing that happened, even though that data wasn't super useful at the start, what it actually did is it created a culture where this was what you have to do. You have to stick to the Gantt, and you have to give feedback on what you've done. And that culture didn't take a very long time actually to set in, maybe 2 or 3 shots, and it was kind of a little bit clunky, let's be fair, but it was starting to work. And so after doing that, starting to do that, we could really see on the diagnostic side where the issue was. Like I said, the Gantts, the good thing about that was the single source of the truth. It just wasn't very useful at the start. So that was the thing that we found out. And then we found out that the contractors didn't stick to it, but then we could fix both of those things in parallel. And that's what we did. So if we really look at, sort of the next step here was the track and monitor step, which, looking at the Gantt, making sure that there's a critical path. This is something that's almost always a problem on shutdowns, is that people most people don't really understand how critical path works, but even if they do, it's not clearly shown in the Gantt, and it's not properly linked. And so when things change during execution, you can't see what happens, how this pushes out, and something else becomes the critical path, etc. So that's something we worked hard on. We also worked hard on making sure that the way that the Gantt rolled up worked. And then we could use the Gantt to put the feedback in. In that feedback process, we tried a few iterations. One was we got them to fill it in on the Gantt. That didn't work very well. Then we got them to come and see us, and we filled it in. And so ultimately, we got to a place where we could actually have a good Gantt, plus do the feedback on the run and see what that actually means for the bigger shot. So again, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. This is not rocket science. But doing it with 2,000 lines and 20 contractors, like in a 2.5-day shot, it's difficult, right? It's hard. But that made a huge difference in terms of what we could achieve. So that was kind of the intervention part. And then over the last few months, we've been working on transitioning that back into Talison hands completely, so that it's completely owned. And that's where we are right at the moment. And since this work is concluded, there's also been other iterations with software coming in and taking care of that input from the contractor side, etc. So that's good. So if I think about what we fundamentally worked on the hardest, I've probably mentioned all of this stuff already, but maybe the one thing that I'll get Adam to talk about is readiness tracking, because I was talking more about when the shutdown's on, but there's a lot of work that has to happen before the shut, right? In this kind of 8-week iteration. Do you just want to talk a bit about that, Adam?
Yeah, no problem, Dirk. And that was a major challenge for us at Talison, is how we organise the business to get ready for a shutdown. And the concept of a shutdown readiness tracker isn't a new concept. Most places will have one. But what made the challenge unique for us was we had 8 shuts at any one point in time at different stages of readiness. And then how do you amalgamate that information into something useful for the leadership team to understand where their risks were and what was coming at them? So what we did, we developed a Jira-based tool with one of our business partners, Interviews, which allowed us to do this quite effectively. So we identified 90 discrete tasks for any given shut that need to happen across the business for us to get ready for a shutdown. And these weren't like jobs within SAP or a work management thing. These were actually things that we needed to happen that we otherwise just relied on people to do. So with 72 shuts per year, that's over 6,500 tasks that we just hoped happened by people relying on good faith and role discipline to occur. So we needed to develop a tool which allowed us to amalgamate our position across the different shutdowns and to quickly call out where our risks were, and then allowed us to act on it and course correct before we arrived at the shut execution.
So that was an important sort of part of getting ready for the shut. During the shut, this execution monitoring that I talked about was very important and really helped introduce discipline. And somebody asked me, if you had to sum up this whole thing in 2 words, what would it be? And I didn't have time. I couldn't immediately figure it out. But I did since, and it's collaborative discipline. That's what sums this up for me. If we collaborate and we're disciplined, we get a much better outcome. And we'll show you the outcome in a minute. And then the other thing was this short interval control sort of concept, which goes hand in hand, which is if we know what's happening, if we know what the status of the jobs are, if we know how that pushes out into the future, then we can do something about it now. We can increase the amount of resources we put on it. We can, we can pull whatever strings we need to pull, but we can do something while the shut is still on, and not talk about it in the post-mortem meeting. I think that was also a very important part of the journey, was that we implemented this post-mortem meeting. We didn't call it post-mortem. That's probably the wrong word for it, but Louisa? Lessons learned. That's much better language. Thank you. So the lessons learned sessions were really quite good. And it's interesting. They started with a few lessons, and then we would really work it into the next shut, and then a few more and a few more. Then all of a sudden, it's self-perpetuating. So that was great. So here are the results. So it's probably one of the charts I'm most proud of in my whole career. And what you can see here is the overruns for each one of the plants, you sort of in the couple of years leading up to this. And then how that, after we started implementing the things we just talked about, how that pulled into line very quickly and very significantly. And we're not completely there yet. This is a journey that will continue to go, but I'm sure you can agree that that's the mean is much lower, and there's no more outliers, right? And that's a big one, because an outlier means a plant's down for a long time. So massive improvement in average performance and an elimination of bad outliers through a few simple things that we implemented together as a team. So average overruns reduced by 42%. It's much more predictable now, and no more extreme overruns, which is a really, really good outcome. So what are the 3 key takeaways here from this process? I think I already talked about this. Discipline is really important. And Adam talked about how the contractors work. And they're a great contract. I've worked with many contractor workforces. But generally, you don't find them collaborating that well and helping each other out. Everybody's kind of in their lane and whatnot. It's not that. They really work together well. So that collaboration and the bringing of discipline to that collaboration has been pivotal in moving this along. This visibility and control to enable better decisions, talked about that. If you know what's going on, you can make a decision now that can prevent a poor outcome, or at least mitigate it, right? In many cases, we didn't eliminate it, but we were able to mitigate it together as a team. And then you need ownership on the front line, right? That is why there's a transition step of all of this to the Talison team, and they've taken that on board and are doing a great job with this. So these are kind of the 3 takeaways for us in terms of what made a big difference in this journey. Adam, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple other learnings that we've had as well along the way. So what works everywhere else doesn't necessarily work at Greenbushes. So out-of-the-box solutions aren't easily applied they just don't stand up to the pressure of our 2-weekly cycle and the numerous constraints that we have. So, but not only did we learn what changes worked and what didn't, we also learned how to make change and how not to make change. And I think that was a journey that both our organisations went on together. We really developed a fail-fast approach where we tested changes quickly, measured the outcome, kept what worked, discarded the rest. And you know, one of the blessings of the 2-weekly cycle, we have plenty of opportunity to try all this stuff. So it made this rapid, iterative approach ideal for our situation. And I probably, in addition to that, we had some great tools and solutions that we had developed, but we had not fully leveraged. Shutdown Readiness Tracker I mentioned was one example. We've been implementing the Palmcrest scheduling software solution as well, but we literally had to brute force these things into existence to make them become business as usual. And this required a lot of effort, but that was the only way to get these things up and going. We were busy on the 2-weekly shut cycle. By the time we got out of the shut, we're staring at the next one. We just had to put a lot of manual effort in to bed these things down and to start using them and leveraging these tools for maximum effectiveness. So, in addition to the takeaways up there on the screen, I think they were the other two for me that really stuck out.
Yeah, thank you. I love it every time you say brute force it into existence, because that's really what it was like. I think there was a pivotal moment where the COO said specifically to Adam, but also to us collectively, this next shutdown is going to work. You're going to make it work. I don't care what it takes, we're going to make it work. And that just like changed the energy to the point where things started flowing. So a great outcome, a very interesting process, and really loved working in this space and having this significant impact. So we've got a few minutes for questions here. So yes, open the floor. I'll have to give you a mic so that Adam can hear you. Anybody got a question?
Yeah, just a quick question just on your routine. So what sort of core routines do you have? Who's in the meeting? What does that look like to make sure you're staying on track? And what buy-in do your 20 contract partners have through those routines in the planning horizon as well?
You want to take that, Adam?
Yep, no worries. So with the contractors coming every second week, there's plenty of opportunity to catch up with them prior to the shut. We do run prep days, which we have the contractors come out to, but it's probably more routines that we have during the shut, which are the key to our success. So we do a daily meeting at 2 o'clock where we get all the contract supervisors together in a room full of people, and it's the most well-attended meeting on site. And there never needs to be a calendar invite. Everyone knows 2 o'clock during a shutdown, everyone needs to be in that room, and we need to talk about safety, we need to talk about work, and we need to talk about what problems people have. And that was often where we've got our contractors, our contract supervisors would throw up their hand for help and go, hey, I need some assistance here. And other contractors would go, yep, no worries, we can spare some people to help you out. And those conversations would happen within the room. So that was facilitated by our shutdown coordinators, but we always made sure that we had our superintendents in the room, our maintenance manager in the room, but it was the contractors meeting, it was for them. That was a routine that we've had for a while, but one of the new routines we brought in was doing daily stand-up meetings twice a day or twice a shift actually in the plant. So in the control room of the plant that the shut's happening in, we've got the key people together from the Talison operations, maintenance, shutdown teams to do a quick touch point, a quick 15-minute stand-up. And that was one of the short interval controls that was really quite effective, because given these shuts are so short, we can make or break a shut inside a shift. And if we don't catch our issues early and make the required changes, then before you know it, we're staring down the barrel of an overrun. So these quick, short, sharp meetings in the plant really made a huge difference to trying to get our shutdowns back under control.
Yep. Well, we've run out of time. The key for me, listening to this and the other streams that as it went through this process, it just reinforces a shutdown stream is bringing out all of the gold that is being repeated and in different ways. There's so much good work coming out. I loved your opening up about how good it is to be at mainstream with like-minded people. Please give both Adam and Dirk a hand. we're moving on to the panel now, team. Thank you very much for those who joined us for this
Thanks,
one.
Adam. Really appreciate it. Sorry.
Thanks, Dirk. No worries, mate. I'll chat to you later.
Yeah.
So, next up will be John and his team and a panel discussion. So we'll get that set up for the next one. Thank you very much for your attendance.